Welcome back to Liberty Hour. I am your host, Alex Newman. Thanks so much for tuning in here on the American Media Periscope Network. Our guest today, our first guest, is Judge Jeanine Pirro. She began her career as an assistant district attorney in Westchester County in New York. She actually started the first domestic violence unit in the nation. And as a young litigator, she was the first woman in the history of that county to prosecute a murder case. As a trial attorney, she had a 100% conviction rate, which is just astounding. Highly successful legal career spanning over 3 decades. And then in 1993, she was elected Westchester County District Attorney, held that position for 12 years. And then in 1990, became the first woman to serve as Westchester County Court Judge. And she's been a legal analyst on Fox News for some time now. She's got a weekend program, Justice with Judge Jeanine, in 2011, and has been one of the top rated Saturday evening slots for over a decade. It is the top rated program there. And she co-hosts The Five on Fox News. Actually, over in the studio, they had it running. So we just saw Judge Jeanine on TV. She's also got a new book out, which is just extraordinary, folks. You need to get a copy. It's called Crimes Against America: The Left's Takedown of Our Republic. Judge Jeanine, welcome to the program. Thanks so much for joining us. Now, in your book, you talk about this trend toward being soft on crime. You talk about something called criminal privilege. What is causing this, and why is it so dangerous?
Well, in my book, Crimes Against America, I talk about the fact that the left is literally taking down our republic. And in order to do that, they need chaos and anarchy. In order to have chaos and anarchy, they take down law and order. Law and order is one of the foundations of this country. And in fact, the first order of government is the protection of its people. In truth, but with the cashless bail that we're seeing, with this social justice nonsense, defunding the police, denigrating the police, doing everything they can to demoralize the police. We're in a position now, in a situation now, where people are not as safe as they once were. Violent crime is at 30, 40-year highs, and they're usually in Democrat large cities. However, it's not just at the local level, it's also at the federal level, where you've got a Department of Justice that calls parents domestic terrorists and sends the FBI to visit parents because they attend a school board meeting. What we've got is a two-tiered system of justice, and everyone knows it and sees it, where, if your name is Biden, you get one kind of justice, and if your name is Trump, you get another. Or if you're with Hillary Clinton, you get a free pass. So my concern about Crimes Against America, and I lay out the book as an indictment. The first charge is breach of sovereignty, where this nation is no longer a sovereign nation. We are literally a global landing spot with benefits for anyone who demands entry. And when they do, they get education, medication, housing. In New York City, they get put up in a hotel. They get food, they get linen service, they get all kinds of games, Xboxes, and they get babysitting services. I mean, this is the wildest, craziest takedown of our republic that I have ever seen, and it's planned. It's a part of a socialist, Marxist, leftist, progressive agenda.
So what do they want, Judge Jeanine? Okay, so you talk about the takedown of our republic. What comes after that if these far left activists get their way?
It's a great question, and the question of what do they want? I can't help but think that what they want is they want the left mentality, Marxism. Barack Obama was a student of Karl Marx. And Barack Obama talked about, when he was first elected president, being, fundamentally transforming America. Barack Obama was the one who, right before his second second term election, he talked in front of the UN, in front of that green marble wall at the UN. He said, "The future cannot belong to those who slander Mohammed." And I remember thinking to myself, the United States president at the United Nations basically saying that you cannot slander Mohammed. What about the First Amendment? What about freedom of speech? Since when is a president telling Americans that they cannot speak in a certain way? And that was the beginning of politically correct speech. If you didn't speak correctly in their mind, you were to be ostracized, and you would be canceled. And it just continued after that. And it was Barack Obama who started taking down police. And Joe Biden is just continuing that. What is their goal? Their goal is to not make America exceptional. Their goal is to make America last. They plundered, and I talk about this in the book, they plundered our resources. Hillary Clinton sold 25% of our uranium to the Russians. Right now, we're shutting down fossil fuels and coal plants and Keystone pipelines so that we can buy lithium batteries in coal powered plants in China, as if China polluting the air isn't going to affect us in America. There's no like Chinese wall that protects us from their from their polluting the air. So I mean, it just goes on. And then we've got the freedom of religion that's at stake. Christianity is now being attacked. We see it. We saw it during COVID. We saw where churches were being shut down, and even the United States Supreme Court, in one case called the Calvary Church, the church was trying to stay open during the pandemic. And the United States Supreme Court came down and they said, and there were two briefs that were joined in opening of their facilities. Supreme Court held, the Cineplex, the multiplex theaters, they can stay open, those 18 theaters. And the casinos in Las Vegas, you want a game of chance, have at it, go for it. But the Calvary Church, you can only have 50 people in your church. You can't have as many people as they have in the theaters or the casinos. I mean, this is a takedown of America. This is crimes against America. And I think that the American people need to see it laid out in the form of an indictment where they lie to us. I call it gaslighting, where they perjure themselves, where Clapper says, we don't spy on Americans. Well, look to the left, not wittingly. And where James Comey gets up, no reasonable prosecutor would prosecute Hillary Clinton. But, then we've got the George Soros funded prosecutors who won't prosecute anybody. So we're in a bad state right now. And I think it's our job to try to fight for this country to make sure that she remains that shining city on the hill that Ronald Reagan talked about.
Absolutely, Judge Jeanine. Now, you spent a lot of time within the judicial system in various roles. And of course, a lot of the transformation of our republic has come from judges, from activist judges, some of it from the Supreme Court. How can and should Americans hold rogue judicial activists accountable?
Well, I think that what Americans can do is, they've got to look to see whether there's impeachment as a possibility, recall is a possibility, depending upon the state that they're in. But I have some good news, and I am very, very heartened by some things that have happened recently. But before I get to that, you've got to make sure you know who's running for DA. You may have a George Soros funded DA and not know it. It's the Democrat Socialists of America PAC that's funding them. You don't want an insurance lawyer as a DA. They don't know the first thing about it, and they're being put up by someone. You've got to know who's on the school board. Are they teaching CRT? Are they teaching white kids to feel like they're oppressors and that they are not deserving of their position in society, that they have white privilege that they're not entitled to? Are some of these people on the Board of Education, do they want to teach our kids about transgenderism at the age of 5 and 6? Look, I was a prosecutor, a judge, and a DA for over 3 decades. I ran for office 5 times. And if you showed my kids the things that they're showing little kids in school, I charge you with child pornography, because these kids don't need to see how oral sex is performed on someone of the same sex. And they say that Republicans are banning books. No, they're not. They're just saying you need to be a certain age before you can see this book. But I am heartened, and this is where I started. I am heartened by the fact that you saw what happened to Anheuser-Busch with Bud Light and Dylan Mulvaney. You saw what's happening, or see it now, what's happening to Target. $10 billion lost. These are Americans, parents, people who are middle of the road saying, this is too much. This is a road too far. And they are saying enough is enough. And if we continue to do this, if we continue to say, you know what, you're not going to impose this leftist nonsense on us. This is not Marxism. This is not socialism. This is the United States of America. We are a merit-based, capitalist-based nation. And we believe in law and order because without law and order, as I often said when I ran for DA and was elected again and again and again, was if you don't have me prosecuting crime, your businesses are not going to prosper. If you don't have me prosecuting crime, your home values are not going up and your children will not be safe. So you need law and order. It is a fundamental principle, and they're taking it down. And that's why I wrote Crimes Against America, the left's takedown of our republic, that you can get anywhere: Barnes and Nobles, Amazon, judgejbook.com, anywhere you get books.
Well, I appreciate that very much, Judge Jeanine. You know, you talked a little bit about some things that people can do, but building on that, I think a lot of Americans are concerned about what's happening. They don't quite understand the full scope of it. But what are some things that average Americans, people who are watching this right now, what are some things that they can do to try to stop the radical left in this takedown of America?
Well, first of all, they have to find out, as I said, who's running for office. Okay, they have to hold their feet to the fire, whether they are judges. In my state, New York, I ran for judge, and or whether they're DA or school board members. You've got to join with like-minded people, because when like-minded people get together, they can stop, they can boycott, they can put an end to things. And I don't mean boycotting, someone from his job. I mean products and theories and some of this nonsense that they're doing. You've also got to be vocal. You've also got to not be intimidated. What happened in Loudoun County, Virginia, was a father whose daughter was molested in a bathroom by someone who identified as female but was a male. And the school tried to cover it up. And you know what the school did? They sent the rapist who molested that young girl in a bathroom to another school where he molested another girl. You've got to hold their feet to the fire. You've got to call them out on it. And you've got to join with people who are like-minded and who believe, as you do, that there are certain things that are fundamental in this country, and that you're not going to accept anything that where everybody gets a trophy just for being in something. You get a trophy because you win. You don't send your kids to college. Some parents are talking to me, my kids can't speak up in class. Well, and get them the hell out of that class. Get them out of that college. Don't give them your money. Money is the bottom line with a lot of these people. And joining together with forces like ourselves, being true to our religion, our church, our beliefs, we can make a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've talked about some things that are encouraging, and I agree those are very encouraging. But long term, are you optimistic that the radical left can be defeated before they take down our country? And if so, give us some timelines. Are they going to keep getting more and more wild before they get restrained? How does this work?
Well, but that I had that old crystal ball. I think that, as I said, I am encouraged by what has happened. I think they've gone too far. I think your average American family wants and is entitled to be safe, in addition to wanting to be safe. I also think that your average American family doesn't buy into this transgenderism, keeping this information from parents. You go into those schools and you find out what they're teaching your kids. I think the 2024 election is going to make a big difference. But I also think that it's up to locals to say, you know what? You're not going to send illegals into my town or my school. I pay local taxes to the school board. We have to hire teachers who can speak in the same language as some of these kids. We have to pay, every state pays a part of Medicaid. And there is all kinds of expenses that are engendered by forcing this imposition of illegals into our cities and our towns and our neighborhoods. And just today on the five, we talked about they have vending machines for drugs and Narcans in neighborhoods. You got to stand up and say, not in my neighborhood. You're not going to normalize drugs in my neighborhood. And it's what parents did when they put illegals into gyms in schools. They threw the kids out of schools, out of the gyms, and put adult males in the gyms and schools. And the parents went nuts, like they went nuts in Loudoun, Virginia, which got Glenn Youngkin elected. We can turn it around. We can make it happen.
Amen. Judge Jeanine, before I let you go, I got to ask you, you're with Fox.
Yeah.
Any thoughts, anything you can say on Tucker Carlson and his departure from Fox?
Well, all I can tell you is I'm friends with Tucker. I wish him well, but what's done is done. And I'm thrilled to be able to talk to you and to be on the #1 show on Fox and on all news cable. And that is The Five. I'm going to keep fighting for what I believe in. And that's why I wrote this book, Crimes Against America. I think Americans need to see the way I wrote this book, which is an easy read, but I wrote it like an indictment. The left needs to be indicted for what they've done to us.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Judge Jeanine, the book is
All
Crimes
right.
Against America, The Left's Takedown of Our Republic by Winning Team Publishing. Thank you, Judge Jeanine.